Welcome to the Breakup Recovery Podcasts by your host, Barbara Stevens. Discover the wisdom and remarkable insights of Barbara Stevens, breakup recovery mentor, author, and public speaker. Barbara offers programs and solutions for any breakup so you can turn your life around, create lasting changes for the better, and embrace life again. Hello and welcome to Breakup Recovery Podcast. I'm Barbara Stevens and I'm a breakup recovery mentor. And in this episode, I welcome Karen Covy. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So Karen, tell me what you do.
I am a divorce advisor, attorney, mediator, and coach. So basically, I've helped people go through divorce for more years than I care to admit in every way that there is to do it. I'm a collaborative divorce lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer. I'm a mediator. I'm a divorce coach. So any way that people want to get divorced, I'm equipped to help them.
So what do you do different to any other divorce lawyer?
What I do differently is I focus on education because I believe that if people understand the divorce process, which is not an easy process to understand, but if they get the knowledge and information that they need on the front end, they're going to make better decisions during their divorce, and those better decisions are going to put them in a position to have a better life after their divorce. So they'll be ready once their divorce is over to actually move forward with their life and to create a new life for themselves and their children rather than still being embroiled in conflict and being bitter and fighting and really locked in the divorce, because the divorce doesn't have to be your whole life. It shouldn't be your whole life. It's only a piece of your life. But if you don't go through it with the knowledge and education to make good choices, it can become your whole life. And that's not what anybody wants.
Yes, that's so true. Divorce can actually take over all the thought processes that people are having. And I guess it can be very confusing for some people. Divorce can be a confusing time for most people. So what would you suggest people can do to help them through this process?
The first thing that people need to do is to educate themselves. Understand what they're facing before they jump into a divorce. So what do I mean by that? There's a lot of different areas that you've got to educate yourself on. Number one is the divorce process itself. Now, in America, there's a lot of different ways to go through a divorce. You can go to court and fight. You can negotiate directly with your spouse and then just do an amicable divorce. You can mediate your divorce. You can have a collaborative divorce. And so you can even arbitrate your divorce. So there are all kinds of different ways that you can get through the process. You need to understand those ways and so you can make a choice as to which way is going to be best for you. You need to understand your financial situation so that you can decide how you're going to divide things up and how you're going to structure the finances after your divorce. And the time to educate yourself is not at the end or halfway through. It's in the beginning of your divorce so that you truly understand what you're facing, and that will allow you to get through the process in a better way.
So tell me about your book.
I wrote a book called When Happily Ever After Ends: How to Survive Your Divorce Emotionally, Financially, and Legally. And that's a book for real people, and it's designed to give you, again, the knowledge and information about how the divorce system works and to deal with some of the problems that you're facing. Like, it gives you some tips about how to deal with your spouse if you've got a spouse that's, how should I say this, being difficult in your divorce. There's worksheets and practical information that you can get from the book that will help you get through your divorce in a way that's best for you.
So where can people get this book, Karen?
You can get it either from my website, which is KarenCovy, Covy.com, or it's available on Amazon. Either way.
I guess most people, when they're going through their divorce, their separation or breakup, have a lot of fears. They fear about their future. They fear about how they're going to handle things. They fear about what their life is going to look like. So what can people do to alleviate those fears?
Well, in my experience, people are afraid of three things. So the top three fears for people going through divorce are, number one, the fears surrounding money, meaning, will I have enough money to survive after my divorce, and what will that look like? Fears surrounding their children. A lot of people are worried that their divorce is going to ruin their children's lives, or that their kids are never going to get over it, or it will affect their relationship with their children. And the third biggest fear that people have is the fear of being alone. They think that after their divorce, they wonder whether they'll have another relationship. Will anyone ever love me again? Will they ever get married again? They're afraid of living life on their own. So how you handle each fear depends on which fear we're talking about. The financial fear, the best way to deal with that is actually the best way to deal with all of them is to start by educating yourself, because that's going to take some of the uncertainty out. So in the financial area, if you understand what your financial situation is, so you sit down and you make a budget and you make a balance sheet, as cumbersome as that is, I mean, it's nobody's idea of fun unless you're an accountant or, a numbers person, but you sit down and you dive into those numbers and you figure out, what do you really have? What are you looking at? Then you can start to deal with it. That's going to reduce the financial fear. With the fear for your children, again, educate yourself. Talk to a child specialist, a therapist. Read some books on how to help your kids get through the divorce. So you're going to learn about, how do you tell them about the divorce? What kinds of parenting time schedules can you make that are going to really work for your kids? You're going to work with your kids and learn what is best for them. And once you start doing that, again, you're going to be able to manage your fear a little bit better. And as far as the fear of being alone, I encourage everyone who's going through a divorce and even a breakup, get yourself a therapist. If it's any kind of a significant breakup at all, you need support. You need help. There are emotions that you have to process, and the fears that you have of being alone, of never finding anyone else again, those are things that with a good therapist you can start to work on, and you can start to appreciate yourself for who you are and realize that whether this was a divorce, whether this was a significant breakup, doesn't make any difference. You are valuable and you are important and you're special. And there will be another person for you, but you've got to put yourself back together, get up, dust yourself off, and it'll take time. But once you heal from this broken relationship, you're going to put yourself into a position where you're ready for the next one.
Great advice, Karen. I know that when people do have those fears, especially the one with their children, there can often be a lot of conflict involved with the negotiations with the other partner. What do you suggest people do in order to alleviate that conflict, to come to a happy conclusion or a happy settlement with the other partner?
There's a couple things, and I talk about this in my book. Number one, get a handle on your own emotions. And number two is stop trying to control your spouse and your spouse's emotions, because it's never going to work. You are never, ever going to be able to do it. But if you can control your own emotions, that alone will get you a better outcome in your divorce, even if your spouse is still acting like a jerk. So you give up your tendency to want to control your spouse and you say, okay, these are what my goals are. I'm going to deal with my own emotions. And if you can manage them, like you feel yourself starting to get angry with your spouse, stop, take a breath, walk away, take a deep breath, work on controlling your own state, and then you will control the negotiations. Because study after study after study have shown that it is not divorce that hurts children. It's conflict that hurts children. So if you start with the idea that one of your goals in getting through this breakup is to protect your children and to minimize the damage that you're doing to them, then you're going to start by putting in your head, I don't want to fight with my spouse because it will hurt my children. And with that in your mind as your overarching goal, you'll be able to work on your own state and your own emotions so that you can achieve your greater goal. Even though sometimes it'll feel like you're giving in too much or you're getting taken advantage of, if you look at your big goal, you're going to be able to do that much more effectively.
That is so true. I think to help someone remember that sort of statement, it's good to write that down, isn't it? It's good to have it in front of you so that every time you might get an email or you might have a text message or you might have a conversation with your spouse and you feel it's not going your way or you can feel that those emotions are building up inside of you, if you can go back and look at that statement, I'm here to help the children, or what would be the best outcome for the children, well, there might be a practical step that you can use to stop those emotions getting out of control.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I encourage people to do right from the start is to sit down and take some time to brainstorm what they want at the end of the divorce. What are their goals? What is the most important thing? And here's the trick, though. You don't get to say, I want 25 important things, right? You can only have one most important thing, maybe two. The top of your list is 3. That's it. And you focus on those things. And you can have other things that you want as well, but you've got to make a list and you've got to prioritize what's truly important and then focus on that. Write it down. Put that list right in front of your face, somewhere that you see it every single day, and that'll help remind you of what you're going for and what really matters to you. Because so many people in a divorce, they get caught in the weeds. Your spouse triggers you to argue about something, and that something leads to another something, and before you know it, you have this big row going on, and you don't even remember what you're arguing about. And in the grand scheme of your divorce, it doesn't matter. But now you're so upset, you can't get to the things that do matter. So make your goals, write them down, and keep your eye on the goal the whole time you're going through the process.
I've never heard of that, but what a great way to get through your divorce, your separation, your breakup, to think about what your end goal is.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I practice is something called collaborative divorce. And I know they have it all over the United States, and they also have it in Australia. And collaborative divorce, at the very first meeting, when you sit down with your attorney, your spouse, and your spouse's attorney, and you sit down and you start to work out how you're going to deal with your divorce and deal with the issues in your divorce outside of the court system, the very first thing you do is you sit down together and say, what are my goals? Then your spouse says, what are his or her goals? And the two of you start with, what are your goals? And then the flip side of that is, what are your concerns? What are the things that you're afraid of having happen? And to identify those right from the start gives you some power, because now you've named the boogeyman, right? And so you've named your fear, and now you can say, okay, this is what it is. Because so many times negotiations get derailed not by logical arguments, they get derailed by emotions. So when you're arguing about something, I mean, if you find yourself arguing with your spouse about who gets the Tupperware, I can guarantee you, you're not arguing about the Tupperware. There's some emotional issue that's underneath there, something that you're either angry about or afraid of, that is really driving the argument, right? So by starting out and saying, these are the things I want, these are my needs, and these are the things I'm worried about, these are my concerns, that helps focus you and focus the negotiation so that you can be more productive rather than getting dragged down the rabbit hole of arguing about things that in the grand scheme of life don't matter at all.
Exactly. So what would the work that you've done with people, what would be the most important goal people place on their divorce or what they want to happen at the end of their divorce?
I really don't think that that's my position to say to somebody. That's got to be, it's a very individual thing. People have to decide for themselves what their goals are. I've had people who say, my most important goal is to make sure that my children are okay, to make sure that their life continues on as normally as possible. Other people will take that same goal of children and say, no, my goal is to maintain my relationship with my child. I'm afraid that my child is going to be alienated from me. So you can have a goal that deals with the same subject, but you come at it from a very different angle, and that's very personal. Or somebody's goal might be, I want to make sure that I have enough money to survive after the divorce is over. I want to make sure that I have enough income, or, after I pay my spouse support or after my spouse pays me support. Or I want to make sure that I have enough money for the next X number of years so that I can retool and retrain myself so that I can get a job where I can support myself. Or, there's a million different things that might be important to a person going through a divorce. My job isn't to try to tell anybody what should be important to them. Forget about shoulds. It's personal. What do you want? Identify that, then put that on your list.
Exactly. So if people want to find out more about what you do, Karen, and what you offer, where can they find this information?
Everything that they need is available on my website, which is KarenCovy.com. I have a lot of free tools out there for people because I really am committed to helping as many people as I can get through this horrible process. And I know that divorce is a challenging time financially for people. So I have free things. I have the book, which is, a nominal amount of money. You can get it on Amazon, I think, for $15. And then I have a program of divorce education that people can get that's a little bit more in depth, but is a little higher price. So there's something there for everybody. Everything's on the website, KarenCovy.com.
Thank you, Karen, for coming on Breakup Recovery Podcast and sharing some of your very practical tips and ideas and some of the topics that probably people hadn't thought of having, and especially about the goal setting, about what they want after their breakup, their separation and divorce, and to focus on that. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your tips.
You're welcome, Barbara. It's been my pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode number 093, How to Achieve the Best Outcome for You When You're Breaking Up, with Karen Covy. And it has been helpful in some way. I've put all Karen's website details in the summary of this podcast, so you can visit her site and look at all the free stuff she has to offer. On another note, I'm coming up to my 100th episode soon, which is something I am really proud of, and wanted to do something special for this 100th episode of Breakup Recovery Podcast. I would love to answer any questions you, the listeners, might have for me. Any questions I might not have answered in previous Breakup Recovery podcasts. Or maybe you would like me to answer a question more in depth. Maybe I skimmed over an answer, or because of time restraints, I didn't quite give you enough details, aspects, or points on this particular subject. Or you have a request of a subject you would like me to cover, or maybe you just have a comment or an observation you'd like to share. So there are a couple of ways you can send through your questions or comments, and that would be to go to my website, barbarastevens.com.au, and click on the contact button, or another way would be to go to my Facebook page and hit the message button and do it that way, whatever works for you. I won't mention your name when I'm reading out your question during the 100th episode if you don't want me to. So be sure to mention that you don't want your name read out in your email or your message to me. I look forward to receiving your questions, your comments, your observations, and recording my 100th episode of Breakup Recovery Podcast. And the last thing I'd like to say is, be gentle on yourself. You deserve happiness.
If you would like to hear previous Breakup Recovery podcasts, visit barbarastevens.com.au. Connect with Barbara Stevens on social media with Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor on Facebook and at You'll Be Okay on Twitter. Read further blogs, view webinar replays, and download your free ebook, 3 Easy Steps to Surviving Your Breakup, and much more at barbarastevens.com.au.